Listen to me. When you go silent after she rejects you, it sends a message louder than anything you could ever say. It's not angry. It's not emotional. It's not dramatic. It's just absent. And that absence speaks volumes. You might not realize it, but that silence, that complete withdrawal of your energy, your words, your effort is starting to weigh on her in ways she didn't expect. See, she thought she had the upper hand. Maybe not maliciously, but in her mind, she assumed she was in control of the narrative. She was the one making the decision. She said she wasn't ready. She said she needed space, or maybe she just wasn't feeling it in the same way. And you, being the amazing, open-hearted man you are, respected that. You didn't beg. You didn't push. You didn't throw a fit. You just stopped. You stepped back. You went quiet. And in that moment, everything shifted. Because what she didn't expect, what very few people expect, is for a man to walk away with dignity, to disappear without drama. She thought you'd still be there subtly orbiting, checking in, liking her stories, replying to her posts, staying in the wings just in case she ever changed her mind. That's what she thought she'd get. And when she didn't, it confused her. She might not show it. You might not see it on the surface, but underneath, something is gnawing at her. Your silence is unsettling. Not because you're trying to hurt her, but because it holds up a mirror. It forces her to confront the reality that you're not waiting around, that you're not holding your breath for her to reconsider, and that maybe, just maybe, she underestimated you. What you've done without realizing it is reclaimed your power. You see, silence after rejection isn't weakness. It's control. It's emotional discipline. It's saying, I know my value, and I don't have time to explain it to someone who couldn't see it when it was right in front of them. That is incredibly powerful. Straight up. When someone rejects you, they often expect to feel relief. They think they've made a clean break. But what happens when they don't get the closure they thought they would? What happens when instead of sadness or anger or pleas for understanding, all they get is nothing? They start to wonder. They start to feel the weight of their decision. That clean break they imagine becomes a void. And the thing about voids is they're uncomfortable. They echo. And in that echo, all she can hear is the absence of you. She may start rationalizing it. Maybe he's just playing games. Maybe he's trying to manipulate me. But deep down, she knows this isn't a game. This is a man who removed himself with grace. This is someone who didn't need to make a scene to be unforgettable. And what's ironic is, in trying to protect herself, in trying to stay in control by ending things or keeping you at arm's length, she's now lost the very thing that made her feel safe. Your presence, your care, your interest. It's gone. And now the silence she thought she wanted feels like punishment. Even though you're not doing anything to her, you're just not doing anything. This isn't about trying to make her regret it. This isn't about trying to hurt her or win some emotional chess match. It's about respect for yourself. It's about stepping out of a situation where you weren't fully chosen and choosing yourself instead. And that, more than anything, is what starts to kill her inside. Not because you've hurt her, but because you've shown her something she didn't expect. That you're perfectly capable of walking away from someone who doesn't see your worth. And here's the thing, silence doesn't just leave her wondering about you. It forces her to reflect on herself, on what she missed, on why she didn't fight harder, on whether she was too quick to give up. Your absence becomes the space in which she confronts her own limitations, her own fears, her own emotional immaturity. And that's uncomfortable. It's easier to believe that you're the one who's still hung up. It's easier to assume you're checking her page, waiting for a sign. But when there's no sign, when there's just silence, that's when the doubt creeps in. She starts wondering if maybe you were never as attached as she thought. If maybe instead of her rejecting you, you were just giving her the opportunity to reveal who she really is. Maybe this wasn't a rejection at all. Maybe it was a test, not of whether she wanted you, but of whether she was capable of recognizing something real. That realization stings. And now the man who walked away quietly becomes the one who's remembered the most. Not because you made a scene, not because you flooded her inbox with messages, but because you let go. And in letting go, you became unforgettable. So if you're wondering whether your silence means anything, it does. It means everything. It's not passive. It's not weak. It's the clearest boundary you can set. It says, I gave you a chance. You passed. And I'm not here to convince you to try again. And while she's sitting in that silence, trying to fill it with distractions, you're already moving forward. You're already healing, evolving, and aligning with someone who won't need silence to realize your worth. Sometimes the loudest thing you'll ever say is nothing at all. You know what's interesting? Most people think rejection is the end of the story. That once someone says, I don't want this, the chapter is closed, the book is shut, and you're supposed to move on with some kind of silent dignity. But here's the twist, and listen to me closely. The story isn't over when she rejects you. In fact, for her, that's often when it starts to get real. She expected you to chase. Let's be honest. That's what many people are conditioned to expect. They assume that the moment they say this isn't working, the other person will scramble to prove their worth. That they'll reach out, text, call, ask what went wrong, maybe even beg for another chance, or try to subtly stay in the orbit, hoping proximity will reopen the door. That's what she thought would happen, because that's what usually does happen. That's the pattern. But you didn't do that. You didn't text. You didn't call. You didn't send one last long message trying to make sense of it all. You didn't look for loopholes in her decision or stay in touch under the pretense of staying friends. You just stepped back quietly, completely, without noise, without drama, without a final scene, period. And that silence, that absence, that unexpected detachment, it didn't just surprise her. It shook her, because rejection for her wasn't meant to be a clean break. It was meant to be a power play. Consciously or not, she thought she'd have the upper hand, that she could reject you, but still enjoy knowing you'd be there. Maybe not right away, but eventually, that even if she walked away, your heart would still sit there, waiting, open, available. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's just ego. It's the human desire to feel wanted, even when we're not choosing someone. It's the comfort of knowing you have someone in your corner still rooting for you, even after you've walked off the field. But when you didn't chase, when you didn't even blink, that comfort was gone. Suddenly, the safety net vanished. And that moment right there is when it starts to haunt her. She begins to question everything. Was he ever that into me? Did I misread how much he cared? Is he already over it? Did he have someone else, or worse? Was I not as special as I thought? See, we all crave certainty. And when you reject someone and they walk away silently, you lose the narrative. You lose the sense of control. Now she's the one left with questions. Now she's the one scrolling back through old messages, trying to reread the tone in your texts, trying to figure out where your head's at. Not because she's still in love with you necessarily, but because the uncertainty drives her insane. She had a script in mind and you didn't follow it. And let me tell you, there's something incredibly powerful about that, because the moment you deviate from the expected script, you reclaim control of the story. You're no longer the rejected one. You're the unreadable one, the mysterious one, the one who doesn't need to beg for validation or prove their value after someone walked away. You became the kind of man who communicates something far stronger than any text message or emotional outburst ever could. You communicated with your silence that you know your worth. That if a woman can't see what you bring to the table, you'll simply go without debate, without delay. And that energy, that's rare. That's unforgettable. And don't think for a second she doesn't feel it. Even if she doesn't say anything, even if she doesn't reach out, even if she pretends everything's fine, trust me, she notices the silence. She checks her phone, expecting to see your name pop up eventually. She waits for that familiar notification, the one that tells her you're still there orbiting. When it doesn't come, it unsettles her. Not just because she misses you, but because she misses the security of being missed. It's in that quiet aftermath when you've gone ghost, not to play games, but to truly move forward, that the weight of her decision starts to land. Not because you said something that made her regret it, but because you didn't. And sometimes that's so much more powerful than any words you could have spoken. She expected to be chased. She expected to feel needed even in rejection. But instead, you gave her a lesson in self-respect. You showed her what it looks like when a man refuses to beg for the bare minimum. When a man knows that love isn't something you audition for, something you're chosen for. And if you're not being chosen, you're not waiting around. You're walking on. And that silence is louder than anything else. It echoes in her mind in the spaces where your voice used to be. And it forces her to confront what she gave up without you having to remind her. Let her sit with that silence. Let her hear what it sounds like when you remove your energy, your warmth, your care, because that sound, that's the sound of you moving on. You know, one of the most powerful things that happens when you choose silence after rejection is that it creates something unexpected. Mystery. And mystery, as strange as it sounds, is incredibly compelling. When you stop trust responding, when you stop chasing, you don't just withdraw yourself physically or emotionally, you actually start to trigger a whole new kind of response in her. Suddenly, she's left in this space of uncertainty, and uncertainty makes people reflect deeply. Think about it for a second. When someone rejects us, there's usually this immediate desire to explain, to clarify, to fix what feels broken. We want answers, closure, a reason why things didn't work out. And often the person who rejected us is expecting some kind of emotional outburst, or at the very least, some continued attention. Maybe they think you'll be upset or confused or desperately trying to win them back. But when you choose silence, when you don't give them that script, you throw them completely off balance. She starts wondering, what is he thinking? Does he really not care? Has he moved on? Or is he hurt in silence? Suddenly, your absence of words becomes the loudest thing in the room. It pulls her into her own head because there's no longer a clear narrative, no explanation, no easy way to move on. She's forced to reflect on her own actions and decisions because you aren't giving her any answers. And that can be incredibly unsettling. Now, this reflection isn't just surface level. It digs deeper than that. When you stay silent, you don't just make her question what you think or feel. You make her question herself. She starts replaying the moments between you, the choices she made, the words she said or didn't say. Was I too harsh? Was I too quick to push away? Did I miss something important? The silence you hold acts like a mirror, reflecting her behavior back to her in a way that forces her to confront the consequences of rejecting you. And here's the key. Mystery triggers curiosity. We're naturally wired to want to solve puzzles, to fill in blanks, especially when it comes to relationships and emotions. When she doesn't know how you feel or what you're thinking, she becomes obsessed with figuring it out. That's why silence is so magnetic. It's the opposite of the predictable script she expected. Instead of you chasing, explaining, or reacting, you're calmly absent. And that absence creates a gap in her mind that she can't ignore. The truth is, when you break that cycle of constant communication after rejection, you shift the entire dynamic. You move from being someone who's available, waiting, and reacting to someone who holds his own space with confidence and self-respect. And that shift makes her reconsider. It makes her wonder if she made a mistake, if she let something valuable go without fully appreciating it. It plants a seed of doubt that's hard to shake because it's not coming from your words. It's coming from the silence. And this isn't about playing games or manipulating feelings. It's about giving yourself permission to step away, to protect your energy, and to show that your worth isn't dependent on her approval. When you choose silence, you're saying without saying that you don't need to justify your value or convince anyone to recognize it. And that kind of confidence is magnetic. It also flips the script on what rejection means. Rejection isn't a final judgment on you as a man. It's simply a decision someone else made that doesn't have to define your worth or your future. By going silent, you reclaim your power. You're not allowing rejection to make you desperate or disheartened. Instead, you create a space where she's left to reckon with what she lost while you focus on your growth and healing. And here's something else. Silence gives you time to reflect on what you want, who you are, and where you're going. Instead of getting caught up in a cycle of back and forth emotions, you get to pause, breathe, and build your confidence from within. This is the real transformation. Because when she sees you calm and composed even after rejection, she knows you're not a man who's easily shaken. You become more intriguing, more respected, and ultimately more desirable. So this silence isn't just about waiting for her to come back or regret her decision. It's about you creating a space where you honor yourself enough to let go of needing answers or closure from her. It's about trusting that your value is already set, no matter what she decides. And as strange as it might feel at first, that quiet strength is what disrupts her certainty, forces her to rethink, and may even open the door to something new between you, but on your terms. The bottom line is, silence after rejection doesn't mean you're ignoring your feelings or pretending it doesn't hurt. It means you're choosing to hold your power, protect your peace, and let her sit with the consequences of her choice. And in that quiet, something shifts for her, for you, and for what's possible next. Silence can be the loudest message you ever send. You know, one of the most powerful things you can do after someone rejects you, after she pulls away or shuts the door, is to say nothing at all. It's almost counterintuitive, isn't it? Our instinct is to explain ourselves, to justify, to plead, or even to lash out in anger. But silence speaks louder than words ever could. And here's the thing. When you don't chase, when you don't beg or defend your worth, You are teaching her exactly how valuable you are without having to utter a single word. Think about it like this. When a woman rejects you, what is she really saying? Sometimes it's not about you at all. It might be about her own fears, her inability to commit, or her uncertainty about herself. But what you do after that moment of rejection is crucial, because that's when you hold the power to shape the story. The story she will tell herself about you, about her, and about what could have been. When you respond with silence, it creates a powerful shift in the dynamic. Instead of giving her the reaction she expects, the hurt, the pleading, or the drama, you become a mystery. You become a man who respects himself enough not to beg for attention or approval. That silence isn't emptiness, it's strength. It's the sound of self-respect echoing in a room that's been filled with uncertainty. And here's why this is so magnetic. By not chasing her, by not trying to prove your worth, you're sending a message that is both clear and profound. It's saying, I don't need to fight for your love. I already know what I'm worth. And that message is impossible to ignore. It lingers in her mind long after the conversation has ended. Because when she rejects you, she often expects to see you chasing after her, asking for explanations, trying to get closure, or demanding to be understood. That reaction is what reassures her that she still has power, that she still matters. But when you choose silence, you refuse to give her that reassurance. You refuse to hand over the control of your emotions to someone who decided to walk away. What happens then is fascinating. Instead of feeling relief, instead of moving on easily, she's left with questions. Why isn't he upset? Why isn't he begging? Why isn't he chasing? Suddenly, she starts to wonder about her own choice. And that doubt, that's where your power lives. This silence isn't about punishing her or playing games. It's about honoring yourself. It's about recognizing that your time and energy are precious and not something to be wasted on someone who doesn't see your value. It's about showing her, and more importantly, showing yourself that you have standards. And you're not willing to compromise them just to be someone's second choice. The irony is, when you stop trying so hard, when you stop explaining yourself, people start to see you differently. They see you as a man who is whole, someone who is confident, someone who commands respect. And respect, that's the foundation of any healthy relationship. You don't need to say, look at me, I'm amazing, because your silence already says it. It says, I'm not desperate. I'm not needy. I'm a man who knows his worth and refuses to settle. And that kind of energy is magnetic. It draws people in because it's rare, it's refreshing, and it's powerful. But here's the crucial thing. This isn't about playing hard to get or being cold. It's about being authentic. It's about giving yourself the grace to heal without the pressure to explain your pain to someone who chose not to stay. It's about reclaiming your narrative and refusing to be defined by a woman's rejection. You might feel the urge to fill the silence with noise, to call, text, or post things online that hint at your pain or your confusion. But all that noise, it often drowns out your true value. It makes you appear reactive, needy, or unsure. And none of those things make you more desirable or respected. Silence, on the other hand, is calm. It's composed. It's an unspoken confidence that says, I'm okay without you. And when you are truly okay without someone, something remarkable happens. They start to realize that maybe they're the ones who are missing out. This silence also allows you to reflect. It gives you space to understand your emotions, to process what happened, and to grow from the experience. When you're not busy chasing or explaining, you can focus on what really matters. Your own happiness, your own growth, and your own future. And here's another thing. When you don't chase after a woman who rejected you, you're protecting yourself from the cycle of heartbreak. Because chasing usually leads to more rejection, more pain, and more confusion. But silence creates boundaries. It gives you dignity. It allows you to walk away with your head held high. So yes, your silence after her rejection isn't emptiness. It's an unspoken lesson. It's teaching her your value in a way that words never could. And it's teaching you too how to honor yourself in the face of disappointment. Because at the end of the day, the most attractive thing you can do after rejection is to show up for yourself, to be still, to be calm, to be silent. Because in that silence, you're not just healing, you're rising. And that silence, it's killing her. People often believe that rejection is this final absolute blow, like it defines their worth or it permanently dims their light. And it's understandable why. When a woman turns you down, it can feel like the ground shifts beneath your feet. But here's the truth that most don't realize right away. Rejection itself doesn't make you less desirable. It doesn't change the essence of who you are. What really defines your value, your power, your desirability is how you respond to that rejection. That's the game changer. You see, so many men, when faced with rejection, do exactly what the woman expects. They get hurt, they chase, they explain themselves, they beg for a second chance. They pour out their emotions in the hope that if they just say the right thing or show enough vulnerability, the woman who rejected them will suddenly see their value. But what ends up happening is the opposite. That chasing actually pushes women further away because it communicates insecurity. It says, I need you to validate me. And in relationships, nothing kills attraction faster than a man who doesn't believe in his own worth. When you respond to rejection with grace, with strength, and crucially with silence, that is what makes you stand out. That silence is a powerful message in itself. It says, I am whole, even without your approval. It says, my value is not dependent on your choice. And that kind of energy, it's magnetic. It pulls people in rather than pushing them away. It makes a woman stop and think, wait, what did I just walk away from? Because here's the thing. When you chase, you give away your power. You give someone else control over your emotions and your sense of self. You put her in the driver's seat of your happiness. And what happens when someone else controls your happiness? You're constantly reacting, constantly adjusting, trying to meet her expectations, trying to fix what feels broken. But when you respond with calm, with dignity, and even with a bit of mystery, you take that power back. You become the one setting the pace and the tone. You're the one who decides what you deserve. That's why silence after rejection is so deadly to the woman who turned you down. It unsettles her because it's unexpected. She anticipates a reaction, whether it's anger, tears, confusion, or pleading. Instead, she gets nothing. And that nothing is a vacuum that starts to pull her in. It forces her to reflect on her decision, to consider what she might have lost. It makes her question whether she acted impulsively or whether she underestimated your worth. And here's a critical insight. Rejection is often less about who you are and more about where the other person is in their own life. Sometimes women reject because they aren't ready, because they're dealing with their own issues, or because they don't know how to handle something real and valuable. That's her limitation, not yours. So your reaction becomes a mirror. If you crumble, it confirms her doubts about you. But if you hold your head high, it challenges her assumptions and maybe even makes her regret what she walked away from. There's also a deeper psychological truth here about attraction. People are naturally drawn to confidence and self-respect. When you show that you respect yourself enough not to beg for approval, it triggers something primal. It signals that you have standards, that you know your worth, and that you're not afraid to walk away. And the irony is, when you respect yourself in that way, others start to respect you more too. Sometimes more than they ever did before. It's why silence is often more effective than words after rejection. Words can come across as desperate or defensive. Silence is steady. It's calm. It's unshakable. It tells the other person that their decision, while it affects you, doesn't destroy you. And that resilience is a rare quality, one that people find incredibly attractive, even if they don't admit it right away. You might wonder, but what if she never comes back? What if I'm just left hanging? Here's the thing. Your worth isn't tied to whether she returns or not. Your worth is inherent. When you respond to rejection with strength and silence, you're creating space for better things, for relationships where you're truly valued and desired. You're preparing yourself for a woman who matches your energy, who respects your boundaries, and who sees your strength as something beautiful, not intimidating. And here's another layer. Silence after rejection is also about self-care. It's about protecting your emotional energy from being drained by someone who isn't ready or willing to give you what you deserve. It's about saying, I'm going to hold on to my peace, my dignity, and my happiness. Because at the end of the day, the most attractive thing you can do is to be at peace with yourself. That peace radiates outward, and it draws people in effortlessly. So if you find yourself rejected, don't rush to fill the silence with explanations or apologies. Don't convince yourself that chasing will change a woman's mind. Instead, embrace the power of silence. Let it be your quiet strength. Use it to reflect, to grow, and to reconnect with your own value. Because rejection might feel like an ending, but how you respond is just the beginning of a new chapter. And that chapter, it's yours to write. You know, one of the most powerful things about going silent after rejection is what it does to you, not just to her. Because there's this misconception that when a woman rejects us, we immediately lose all power, that somehow we become less desirable, less worthy, or less significant. But here's the truth. Rejection doesn't make you less desirable. It doesn't diminish your value or your potential to attract what you want. What actually changes everything is how you respond after that rejection. And this is where your silence comes in as something incredible. When you don't beg, when you don't chase, when you don't flood her with texts trying to explain to yourself or get answers, you're actually doing something revolutionary. You're reclaiming your dignity. You're choosing yourself first. And that decision changes the entire dynamic. Because while she's dealing with her own thoughts and doubts, you're growing, evolving, and becoming a man who is no longer waiting around for her approval. When she rejected you, she probably thought that was the end of the story, that by saying no, she'd push you away permanently, and that you'd be stuck in that moment of hurt or confusion. But silence gives you space where you get to breathe, think, and reflect without external pressure. It's in this silence that transformation happens. You get to examine what you want, what you deserve, and what you're willing to accept in relationships moving forward. Let me be clear. That transformation isn't just about healing or feeling better. It's about leveling up. It's about becoming the version of yourself that's stronger, more self-assured, and far more magnetic. You stop being the man who needed her to say yes, and you become the man who no longer needs her validation to feel complete. Now, here's the twist that not many people see coming. Because you've gone silent, because you've stopped chasing, because you've started living your life with confidence and self-respect, there's a good chance she's going to come back. And when she does, she's not coming back to the same version of you. She's coming back to someone new, a man who's already outgrown the old pattern. That's where the real power lies. When a woman rejected you, she was rejecting a certain version of you. The one who was available to be hurt, the one who was open to being pushed aside. But when you grow and evolve, you're sending a message that the old you is gone. The you who tolerated less, who needed constant reassurance, who compromised on what he deserved, he no longer exists. This is why silence after rejection isn't passive, it's active. It's a choice. And it's a way of saying, without saying a word, I'm done settling for less than I deserve. I'm done waiting for someone who can't see my worth. I'm moving forward on my own terms. And that shift, it shakes her to her core because she starts to realize what she lost. She starts to feel the weight of her decision. The silence you gave her, it's not empty. It's full of potential that you're now claiming for yourself. She may come back. Yes. But now you have a choice. And the beautiful thing is, this time it's your choice entirely. You're no longer the man who needed her. You're the man who has options. You're the man who knows his worth. And that changes everything. You're not desperate. You're not begging. You're not scrambling for answers. And those qualities, they are magnetic. People don't want to chase what's desperate or needy. They want to be drawn to what's confident and self-assured. They want to feel like they're earning something precious, not just handed it. So when she sees that silence, when she feels that distance, what she's really sensing is your growth, your independence, your refusal to be anything less than what you know you deserve. That's incredibly powerful. And it's what keeps you in control of your story. What's even more important is that your silence gives you the time to figure out what you truly want going forward. Because when you're caught up in chasing a woman who's rejected you, you lose sight of your own goals and values. You lose sight of who you are beyond that relationship. But silence creates a container for you to reconnect with yourself, to ask, what do I really want? What kind of relationship do I deserve? What kind of life am I building for myself? And when you come out of that silence, you're different. You're wiser. You're more selective. Period.